So I'm one of these academics that you actually try to convince to implement some of these e-learning initiatives. And just before kind of starting my story, I'd just like to say that I'm really quite a personal type of person. I'm not particularly engaged with sharing my private life via social media. And most of my use of social media has been through work in a higher education setting because of that. So I was initially really quite reticent to utilize social media as part of my teaching within higher education. And I think that's important to actually note. In terms of my role at the university, I'm an assistant professor specializing in chemistry education at York. My research interests are in green chemistry education, and I'm also interested in training postgraduate students how to teach our undergraduates, together with engaging with new communication methods, okay, of which social media is one, to actually confer a deep understanding of subject matter amongst our undergraduate and indeed postgraduate cohort. And please feel free to follow me on Twitter there. I post updates in terms of the types of technology that I'm actually using. But as part of this talk, I'm going to be talking about the collection of social media resources that we use at the departmental level, okay, and also at the personal level, not only to benefit the actual learning experience of our students, but also for other things such as advertising, such as dissemination of the actual work that we may do as a department or an actual university. So in terms of the structure of my actual talk, we'll just briefly recap in terms of what I feel as though social media is, okay? I'll talk about some of the existing social media use, as I've mentioned, at chemistry at York, at the departmental level. And I will then specialize in particularly how we utilize social media in hopefully innovative ways, okay, at the departmental level. And that will be comprised of, say, a combinatorial approach of, say, Twitter and YouTube, okay. I'll also detail the most recent work of which the award was based on Snapchat. It's really interesting that you mentioned app design a little bit earlier on in the previous talk. We're going to be talking about two apps that we've actually developed at the departmental level. One, the Chemistry at York app, okay, and another more recent project, and these are both working with students as partners to develop the actual apps, okay. The most recent work is actually a combinatorial approach once again, combining game-based learning in conjunction with social media, okay. So that's the actual outline for this morning. So, and I'm sure you're all aware of this, okay. What do we define as social media? The way that I see it is online communication channels dedicated to community-based input, interaction, content sharing, collaboration. And I've tried to actually divide these into 5 different categories, okay? One being, say, social networking sites, Facebook, for example, Twitter, media sharing sites such as, say, Instagram, Snapchat, and such like. And then a little bit less common, creation and publishing tools, blogs, collation and republishing. You can think of RSS feeds, and finally remixing of content and republishing. So, because I've got a little bit more time, I just want to take this opportunity to invite you just to chat amongst yourselves just for a couple of minutes, just detailing how in your institution or indeed company you've utilized social media, or how you try to encourage either departments or academics to utilize social media. What type of platforms are you recommending to them and why? Okay, just a few minutes. Would anyone like to actually share some of their experiences or what they are trying to do in their institution or company in terms of encouraging social media use? Yeah.
Well, what we found at Leeds is students don't want to use their real social media names.
Yes.
When talking to the academics. So we're looking at sort of creating sort of customized apps for instant messaging, because students do not want to use their Facebook or their Twitter or Instagram IDs because they're scared of the university privacy issues, basically.
Of course.
Which is interesting, because we thought this generation just shares everything online, their entire lives online, but they do understand there's a distinction between their professional lives and their social lives.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, and that certainly comes into play upon my actual Snapchat use that I'll talk about a little bit later. But personally, being quite a private person, as an undergraduate even now, I wouldn't want to personally share my attempt at solving an organic chemistry mechanism, for example, under my own kind of name, yeah. So I can certainly sympathize with that, yeah. Any other ideas about utilizing social media for learning? Just what platforms have you been using?
Yeah, just talking about platforms, we have a partnership with China, and I was there a few weeks ago, and it's completely different, because everything you see back there, they all have VPNs actually, but it doesn't get used in the mainstream. But there, we were discussing, what app do you use and how apps come in and out of fashion.
Yes.
In China, there's one app, it's called WeChat, and everything is done through WeChat.
Okay.
They book taxis, they discuss. I gave a lecture one night, and it's very different there. You get very little facial feedback and things because of the cultural thing. And I was quite despondent. And the next day, the staff said, "Oh, it went really well." I said, "Did it?" "Oh, yeah, it's all on WeChat."
Okay.
And there were pictures and things like that. We're doing it. So
okay.
I think really, the kids, if you like, are always trying to get the latest thing. When we all moved on to Facebook, they moved off.
Yeah.
They moved to Twitter. When we moved to Twitter, they moved off. So we're trying to play a catching up game anyway with it. So it's just an observation of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's particularly challenging. Certainly we'll come on to this later when I talk about Snapchat. But the reason that I've done all the work that I've done with Snapchat isn't because I thought, wow, this is an amazing e-learning tool. I can use it to really help my students understand content. I didn't come at it from that perspective, the pedagogic perspective. I kind of thought, wow, Snapchat is pretty much ubiquitous among my student population. There are a lot of students, 90% are actually utilizing it, those that take my lecture course, okay? Can I utilize it in some way to be of benefit to chemistry education? Yeah, absolutely. And there are trends associated with that, yeah. Any other comments or platforms that you wish to share that you're using institutionally? Any of the ones up there in that picture?
Certainly, over here was the main big ones that were mentioned: Facebook and Twitter, and
Yeah.
was mentioned.
Okay.
Yeah. You were saying that we're all using the main channels: Facebook, Twitter, and Yammer also.
Okay.
So yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, thanks for that. Okay. So let's go on then, and I'll explore how we've been utilizing things like Facebook and Twitter and other platforms in potentially new ways. Okay. So as an academic, I don't really want to take on any of these e-learning tools unless I know there's going to be a clear benefit to the actual students. And I want to be presented with the evidence, either through myself looking in journal articles, in collaboration with the learning teams, all right? And once I've got that evidence and I know how to implement it as part of my practice to save me time, I'm going to be a lot more open to actually trying new things. And the first thing that I actually came across was this quite famous EduCourse Centre of Applied Research, okay? And just very simply, they actually surveyed students, and 67% believed that the devices, not necessarily social media, just devices, are important to their academic success. And so that led me to question, well, what is it about utilizing these devices that they found beneficial? Is it the mode of delivery? Does it help them to engage with the course a little bit more fully? Can we actually develop student communication skills through utilizing social media? Does it help to contextualize content that we're delivering in lectures in the everyday world? Now, these are the sorts of ideas that were going through my head. Now, one thing that I've been particularly lucky about being a chemistry at York is that we have a departmental norm in order to utilize social media for a lot of different avenues, and there are other staff utilizing it that have acted as mentors for me. Okay, so I've been very lucky from that perspective. But to actually resonate with some of the examples that you mentioned, we utilize Twitter very extensively. We have a Chemistry at York departmental page. This isn't particularly novel, okay, where we disseminate perhaps publications, league tables, we might present research, conference presentations, upcoming events, upcoming seminars, celebrate our teaching achievements, celebrate the achievements of our students, utilize it as an admissions tool, okay? And so this is really quite useful for us to disseminate what we are doing as a department, okay? And we have a social media communications group that facilitate a lot of the work with our actual Twitter, okay? We also have an Instagram account here, and what we're actually finding is we're trying to use social media strategically from a promotion and advertising perspective, okay? So, for example, you mentioned Facebook. We're actually utilizing Facebook more to engage with alumni, okay? To actually find out what our graduates are doing, okay? And we invite them back to the department to facilitate careers talks, okay? And there's also a donation side of that too. Whereas for things like Instagram and Snapchat, okay, these are a lot more targeted at applicants, okay? Because it's the younger generation that are using these type of social media apps. So Instagram is quite helpful because you effectively don't have much of a character limit on the far right-hand side there. And for example, we utilize this for, again, posting news updates. This is when I got my social media award. We utilize YouTube extensively too, okay? So this is one example of a portfolio of videos that we have advertising our new teaching labs, our new undergraduate chemistry teaching labs, okay, so this forms part of our admissions effort. We also utilize YouTube for teaching, okay, so we have a suite of practical experiments. Chemistry is a very practical subject, demonstrating key techniques, okay, that our undergraduates will watch ahead of an actual practical experiment, okay, and the students have access to actually PCs in the lab, and they can watch it again and again, for example, okay. So that's the actual departmental use there. What about other staff in the department that have inspired me, that have been utilizing social media for 5 to 6 years already? Well, it really all started with Twitter, okay? So Dr. Paul Clark, who's an organic chemist in the department, he used just a Twitter hashtag, alkene, okay, that's a part of organic chemistry. And effectively, he used to pose questions or problems at the end of lectures, okay? And via the actual hashtag, students used to actually respond and maybe submit their answers to an actual question, okay? There would be a competition, and Paul would provide a prize at the start of the next lecture, okay? It's also another mechanism for Paul to give instant feedback to students. So that's been quite helpful for him. So that's how it started. And then, utilizing YouTube this time, Professor David Smith, one of our National Teaching Fellows, you can see, now this work on the left isn't particularly novel, where, for example, you can see Dave creating a screencast, okay, which could be used for revision purposes. It could be used to facilitate a flipped type classroom, okay? But what he has done as part of summative assessment for his module in polymer chemistry, he's empowered students to have the choice to either write A, a popular science article, or B, produce a YouTube video, okay, that is actually summatively assessed, communicating polymer chemistry. So this student here has produced a video discussing the polymers associated with aircraft, okay? And in doing so, with the appropriate permissions, we've uploaded it to YouTube, and the student has become a global educator within their own field, okay? And we get many thousands of views for these videos that the students create. And as you can see, there are comments as part of that, Okay? So we're actually facilitating online discussion through the actual internet there. All right? So these were some of the model examples that I had before starting my work. More recent work, we've collaborated as an institution with FutureLearn to actually make some MOOCs, massive open online courses, okay? And a chemistry-themed one is called Exploring Everyday Chemistry. It's facilitated by Professor Andrew Parsons. And effectively, okay, it's to aid the school-to-university transition. It's aimed at applicants, okay? But indeed, we also have a significant number of adult learners as well. How does Andy utilize social media as part of his course? Well, you can see here, he has utilized Twitter, and he does about 2 or 3 posts per day of the year for this, okay? And this is contextualizing chemistry in the real world. So it was February the 14th, and you can see he's depicted a chemical structure of what's called dopamine. This is one of the chemicals that are released that makes us feel good or in love, and it was on Valentine's Day, okay? That's an example. As part of the actual course, there's what's called kitchen chemistry experiments. Experiments you can do in the house, okay? And what he's been able to actually do is, through social media, participants have actually uploaded their results to Twitter to share them with the MOOC community and indeed the whole world, okay? So this is a fish-themed lava lamp that one of the participants has actually uploaded. And there's both individual experiments and collaborative ones as well. So for example, students may be given different parameters to investigate, do a little experiment at 10 degrees, 20, 30, okay? And then we could use Twitter to actually collate and discuss their results, okay? But what have you done, Glenn? You've talked to us for 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, and we still don't know what you've done, okay? So this is how I've took it a little bit further, all right? And to start with, and this was very much inspired by Dave Smith's work, okay, at the end of lectures, I ask students to actually solve an actual problem that I will pose, okay, and I encourage them to do this via YouTube, to create a video and ideally post it to my Twitter account where I can provide feedback. Why do students engage with this though? Right, because this one isn't summative. It's not even assessed. Why bother, okay? Unlike Dave's, for example, that was summatively assessed. Well, what I do is, whenever I'm doing an intervention, any sort of creative teaching intervention such as this, okay, it's worth spending, from an academic perspective, just a few minutes in telling the students what are they going to get out of it, okay? You're going to develop your communication skills that are subsequently going to scaffold future summative assessments when you do group presentations, when you do vivas, when you have to defend your thesis in later years, okay? So these are the sorts of conversations that we have just for a minute or two, and this really helps to promote engagement, okay? And we're developing student communication skills through doing this. Now, it doesn't just have to be videos, okay? So this was from April 2018, okay? So, for example, you can see I posed some sort of organic reaction mechanism problem, okay? And you can see the students have actually tweeted me, okay, with their attempt, all right? And you can see I'm able to instantly provide feedback associated with this, okay? So this is to Georgina. Good effort, Georgina. I like your phenol synthesis, though I think we can do the alkylation slightly differently to minimize polysubstitution and the formation of an ion. Any ideas what we could do instead? So the student didn't get it perfectly correct, okay? But I was able to actually give feedback, and there were a few more posts that Georgina actually sent me, and she was able to actually get the correct mechanism in the end. And another motivation for doing this, yeah, go for it.
What kind of percentage of, so what are your class sizes?
Yeah.
How many actually people do they engage with it?
The videos is less than this. I would say with this you're about 60%. In my class, I mean, that ranges from between 100 to 300 students, something like that, yeah. But there is no compulsion to do this, okay? It does not feed into their marks at all. It's purely for them, okay? So, that's an example of something simple that we've implemented there. And I should say there is a prize, okay? What do I use as a prize, as motivation? Obviously not anything exclusive, such as alcohol. One of the things that we do use is we partner with our admissions team, and we have chemistry at York water bottles or chemistry at York fidget spinners, and those act as prizes. Now there's a much bigger prize that we actually give students as part of the work with the app development, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. How else do I use Twitter? I find it brilliant for personally. Nothing to do with my undergraduate students, but personally, my own continuing professional development, okay? LTHE Tweet Chat. This is an absolutely fantastic Twitter account. Every week, there are academics from across the world debating a different topic. Perhaps some of you are aware of this. And I've also just posted some examples of academic staff that I particularly respect in the field of chemistry education or just higher education in general. Some of you may be aware of Phil Race there on the right-hand side. And what I'll say is, and I tell staff this all the time, through Twitter, I've got invited talks at other conferences. So staff aren't actually reading the publications, but they are seeing what I've done at Twitter and think, this person will be quite useful to give a CPD lecture down in London or wherever it happens to actually be. Okay, it's a great platform to disseminate my own work and research. So I'm totally bought into Twitter from a professional perspective. Snapchat then. Okay, so this is the new work. Okay, Snapchat is rather ubiquitous among my student population. It's a very popular app, 158 million. With the average user visiting the app 18 times per day. And effectively, it's a photo messaging app, okay? So you can share photos and videos, all right? However, the limitation is it disappears after a set amount of time. So this could be a few seconds, okay? It could be, well, up to actually 10 seconds. Or the user can actually post it as part of their story. Okay, and hence it stays around for about 24 hours, okay? The useful thing about Snapchat is that such photos and videos, and it's very easy for someone like me to use. I'm not very digitally literate, okay, despite giving this talk. I don't like computers, all right? Or indeed most digital inventions, all right? But it's easy for me because I use my camera on my phone. And effectively, Snapchat's exactly the same as that, but there's an extra step when I send it to someone. So I understand that. But from a teaching perspective, I can annotate my photos or videos with text, or I can highlight things with hand-drawn illustrations. And as I've mentioned, you can send it to actually friends, or indeed to your story, which can be watched by anyone that follows the account. And this links in with the point that the gentleman made a little bit earlier about students not utilizing their own personal accounts, okay? And there's also scope to actually send private messages, including making calls. So that's just what Snapchat is. How have you used it, Glenn? Well, I have my own personal Snapchat account. I did not use that for this study. I established a class account, okay? Chemistry, Glenn, I think. And I invited students in my first year cohorts, about 300, to actually follow the account, where I told them they would view images and video updates via the story feature. I told them I would not add them to this account. Hence, I would be able to not see any of their personal information, which of course is what they wanted, okay? So, because of that though, I wasn't able to intimately communicate with my students through Snapchat. It was more for disseminating information through images and videos. So why have you done it, Glenn? Well, there was a four-pronged approach to actually doing this. One, was able to, hopefully, be able to try to contextualize content in my lectures in the real world. What are the real world applications of this, Glenn? Okay? So hopefully, this would lead to students engaging with the subject matter more deeply, leading to hopefully deeper learning, because they can see how it applies to them and affects them. I've mentioned that chemistry is a very practical subject. So I wanted to utilize Snapchat to demonstrate key experimental techniques that the students would subsequently be utilizing in the laboratory, okay? And I even took it a step further, okay, where I would show setups, for example, say you had to set up a Bunsen burner with a gauze and a tripod, for example, that had mistakes. Now, key point, okay, never shame students' work and actually send that. Whenever I actually did show setups with a mistake, it was me that engineered that, okay? And then I would subsequently ask the students about where the mistake was and post an update. And that's the second approach, okay? So just to actually show this then, okay, this was the contextualization of everyday chemistry. I love golf, okay, and you can see me playing golf there, okay, and I've linked with what I enjoy doing to the chemistry I've taught. So I've got, pleased with my pitch to the green from 130 yards. The core of golf balls contains polybutadiene, of which the chemistry we spoke about in my lectures formed from the Ziegler-Natta polymerization, once again a process in my lectures, of the monomer 1,3-butadiene. On the left-hand side here, we're very lucky that we have a nice big quadrangle in the Department of Chemistry, with lots of daffodils, and I've talked about where the yellow and orange colour for daffodils actually come from, okay, and linked that to the work that I actually taught the students in Lecture 2 on carotenoids, okay. I've also spoken about hair gel on the right-hand side, if you're wondering, okay. So, those are the first two. How else do I use Snapchat? For research labs, okay, to be able to give 300 to 400 students a glimpse, an insight into the research that we are doing in the Department of Chemistry at York, okay? And to be able to provide so many students with that bird's eye view, I found it to be a really powerful tool. Now, obviously, I can do things in my lab, but if I was to go into another lab, you have to get the permission, obviously, from the principal investigator, okay? And which would be the academic in charge of the actual lab. And then perhaps I would feature a PhD student, maybe explaining their work and doing a technique, okay? Obviously, if we're going to include faces of other people, okay, I have to get their permission beforehand, all right, which is very important. So why do you want to do this, Glenn? I want them to once again see how the work I'm teaching them links in with research. I want them to do master's degrees and PhDs in the Department of Chemistry, okay? This has employability opportunities for our students too, many of which will do research as part of summer internships or indeed later in their degree program. At York, we have pure chemistry degrees, okay, where the chemists are going to do research. But we have multidisciplinary degrees as well, combined honours, like biochemistry and natural sciences. And I want them to pick chemistry. I don't want them to pick biology or physics, okay? So this is one way to motivate them to actually do that. Look at all the amazing things we're doing in chemistry that you can be a part of, okay? So, for example, on the left-hand side there, that's an example of one of the videos, okay? So we've got a PhD student there, what's he doing? Running a column to purify a final product for cobalt electrochemistry, okay? And it just so happens that the students are going to run a column in the lab the next day, okay? On the right-hand side, this was me in Brazil in the Amazon rainforest, and I was developing green chemistry experiments. I mentioned that was one part of my research, okay? So once again, the research link. Not necessarily in a lab, though. And on the right-hand side, once again, there, what I tried to actually do was link chemistry with chemical engineering. So you can think of scaling up your reaction and do more like process chemistry. That's another example there. What about the fourth one? Okay. Well, I want to give students, remember I said I'm a private person, all right? I want to give students an insight into my professional life, okay? And I hope that that's going to give me the opportunity for the students to humanize me, make me more approachable, all right? And also, potentially, there may be something from a career development perspective, this is what Glenn does every day. This is what it's like to be a member of staff conducting research in the department, okay? So, for example, just last week when I was writing this presentation, I Snapchatted to the students today. I'm writing a conference presentation about how we utilize social media to enhance learning, okay? So that's all great, Glenn, all right? Does it work though, right? What's the point in actually doing this? So I've actually conducted a kind of semi-quantitative and qualitative study, just a Likert-style questions for the actual students. I started off quite general, okay? Using Snapchat is valuable, in addition to my learning experience in chemistry, okay? So that's quite good. I feel more engaged with chemistry because of Snapchat, okay? That's quite high. One of the key ones that I was interested in was this one here, though. Snapchat is a useful tool to allow me to contextualize my knowledge in chemistry in the real world in my degree program. This is really one of the key drivers for me utilizing Snapchat to enhance that learning experience. So I was pleased that that's quite positive, okay? Now, you've got to remember, though, with these Likert-style questions, the audience that actually complete these surveys may be self-selecting, okay? So you have to bear that in mind as well when interpreting this data. This is an interesting one. This is not so good, Glenn. Okay. Snapchat has contributed in improving my experimental technique in the laboratory. Only 2.95. Why is that low? Okay. Well, I think it's because we take a combinatorial approach to facilitating lab teaching. Okay. So I mentioned those YouTube videos. The students love them. They utilize them to the VLA. They utilize them at home. They utilize them in the lab. Okay. That's a great source. The graduate teaching assistants, the postgraduate students that teach them all day, I think they really help them. And this is an incremental advancement there, okay? So that's how I see it. And the most useful snaps, according to category, are those about. So I was really pleased that real world was high. Experimental technique quite low, so that kind of resonates with what I've just talked about. Surprisingly, professional life's nearly as high as real world. So perhaps they find me interesting, which is good. And research labs somewhere in the middle there. But notice how high the real world is. Hopefully, we're helping the students learn, okay? What about future considerations, Glenn? Well, not every student has a smartphone, okay? So we actually came across that when utilizing Turning Point. Has anyone heard of Turning Point? Yeah, okay. Similar to Mentimeter, right? Okay. But the great fix that we had for that was, of course, students without smartphones. You can ask them, obviously, to collaborate with those around you with smartphones, or you could go to the trouble of buying clickers and actually giving them out. It doesn't really work that way with Snapchat, though, because unfortunately, as I'm aware, if you had a laptop or a PC, you can't utilize Snapchat in the same way as you can with a mobile device, okay? So that's really important when considering inclusive teaching. And I need to improve this, okay? It's an initiative I've just started this year. But really having an Instagram account so I can cross-post everything and archive the contributions, and they don't disappear after 24 hours, would be more useful. Now, you see a lot of students screenshotting a lot of the actual snaps, because you can see that as a feature in Snapchat. So maybe perhaps there is a market to actually do that. But then you're thinking, well, Glenn, why don't you just use Instagram? Yeah? That's a valid question. The reason I tend to utilize Snapchat is I actually conducted a poll and asked the students, do you want Snapchat, Instagram, do you want both? And I think Instagram's kind of better and more engaging, just in the sense that when someone updates, I don't know how familiar you are with Snapchat, but when someone updates their story, you get a little dot, okay? So whereas Instagram, it's less targeted. Okay, and I can see how many students, you can do the same Instagram, but I can see how many students are engaging with my snaps. And what I will say is, despite it, so I have worked out the averages, despite it actually disappearing after 24 hours, 90 to 95% of the cohort view the actual snaps that I send them, which is really quite high. And I want to encourage the members of the department, institution, indeed, other institutions, to participate in this. And we've had an article accepted. So that's Snapchat work, okay? But I mentioned I was going to talk a little bit about app development, okay? So for me, this was a most remarkable project. We wanted to make apps in the department. We spoke to external companies and got a shock that, you know, you're talking tens of thousands of pounds at least, okay? This wasn't viable for us at all. And to start with, we wanted to make a Chemistry at York app to support our admissions effort, okay? So this app is free. It's available to download now on iOS and Android, okay? And this app is effectively compartmentalizing a lot of our web resources, okay? In an attractive manner, okay? Orange and kind of white and orange and black are our departmental colors. That's why I've used orange. So you can see you've got a campus map there, careers, starter information, sort of to aid that school-university transition, news feed, those videos that I was talking about through YouTube, an insight into undergraduate life and what we do on applicant days. How did you make this, Glenn? Well, this was a collaboration with our Department of Theatre, Film and Television at York, just the other building over there, okay? And in fact, this is Chris in the middle there. Chris is a second-year undergraduate student, okay? We employed Chris for 8 weeks, okay? And he came up with this app that's available on both platforms. So all in, how much did we pay? About $2,000, something like that, to employ Chris. So it's fantastic value for actual money. And we didn't have to go to theatre, film and television. They just do an app design course as part of their degree program. I'm sure you would have got candidates in computer science as well, okay? So, what sort of feedback have we had for this app? Really quite surprising. So, one of the actual quotes from applicants, thank you for introducing me to the app, a service I haven't seen any other university employ. Now, I have seen institutional apps. So, for example, Durham's institutional app's very good, I think. Loughborough, they also have a very nice one. But at the departmental level, we tend not to actually see this, okay? So it helps us to stand out, which is great for us, yeah? It has given me insightful information about York as a university, the students that study with you in the Department of Chemistry. That's quite nice. Now, York, we don't tend to have many international applicants, okay, compared to London, for example, okay? And in the cold light of day, we want more international applicants and they generate more money for us, okay? So anything that's going to help to enhance that effort is great. And it's heartening that about half of our downloads are from outside of the actual UK, okay? Now, I'm not saying that this app is directly responsible for an increase in international applicants, okay? But perhaps it might contribute. It might not. And the way we made it was a database, a platform that could be populated with discipline-specific content, okay? And so, in terms of knowledge transfer, biology department approached me and said, can we use this framework that you've developed and populate it with biology content? Take all the chemistry out, make it into a green and black color scheme, that's what biology are, okay? And put all the biology stuff there. And we were collegial. We let them do this for free, yeah? And so it's actually spreading throughout the university just from this $2,000 investment, okay? So we were really quite pleased about that. Some of the most newest work, okay, getting back to learning. We recently, as in last summer, and tested it a few weeks ago, developed an app for game-based learning, okay? And this was exactly the same model as Summer Student, okay? Also in theatre, film and television, called Jake. And this was called Organic Fanatic, okay? This is once again available for you to download for free on iOS and Android, okay? Any sort of feedback on this, by the way, it's just a beta version from you, would really help me, okay? So please do let me know your actual thoughts. What's the point in this app, Glenn, then? It's a quiz app, okay? It's not particularly novel. It's to aid the school to university transition in organic chemistry, okay? And we use it also, there's sort of different levels to the app, so there's easy, medium, and hard. And certainly at the hardest level, this does help our undergraduates at the end of our first year revising for their exams, which are happening now, okay? So it's a quiz-based app. It's a database, okay, that can be populated with discipline-specific questions and answers. So you can imagine biology wanting to use it probably. They'll be in contact soon, okay? But why does it distinguish itself from all the quiz apps out there, Glenn? Okay. Well, we've tried to make it fun. We've tried to make it addictive. We've done it in an arcade style, okay? So that's it, yeah, well done. We've added music. There is a single-player mode, okay? And effectively, you have to go through the actual levels in the shortest time, okay? So I'll talk about a competition we launched associated with that in a second. What I don't see much online is the actual multiplayer ability, okay? Why would you want to use this in a teaching setting, all right? Well, we kind of made it so that you have one phone and you pass it around a group of, say, up to 6 students, okay? It's like a hot potato type game, all right? But it encourages cooperative, collaborative, and competitive learning, all right? What do I want to say that? Yes, and so this can be useful, say, in tutorials or workshops, support sessions to break the ice at the start. And it's great to get students talking and having fun, okay? And as you can see, there is scope to include diagrams, chemical structures as the answers, but also as the questions, okay? So what have we done with this recently, okay? Well, we've launched a single player mode to all 300 students, chemists, natural scientists, biochemists, and we've asked them to post their top score, which is the quickest time that you can complete the app, via screenshotting to Twitter, or indeed emailing me, okay, either one. And there's a prize associated with that, okay? And we've also experienced students posting queries pertaining to the actual game, okay? Not in terms of why it's not working, but in terms of the chemistry behind it. So again, it's another feedback mechanism for me and to be able to answer them, okay? So here is, for example, a poster that I did as part of my lecture course, and Professor Andrew Parsons did it with the chemists, okay? So you can see we're telling the students where to actually find the app, what to do, and that there'll be an actual prize associated with it. And this was advertised very well in lectures, okay? And we also, as I mentioned, utilize it at the start of support sessions through tutorials, okay? So a representative example there, there's Dan. Glenn and Hurst can't seem to do any better than that, so there's my go at this, okay? So that's Dan's time. He didn't win, though. Actually, a different student won, okay? And we acknowledged this yesterday, when I was away from the department, but anyway. we acknowledged this yesterday at the Department of Chemistry at York. Duncan, you can actually see, got a very quick time, somehow, of 17 seconds, okay? And the actual prize there was a big set of Lego, okay, which hopefully you'll use for learning purposes, all right? And as you can see, we're trying to recognize the contribution of our undergraduates, okay, through posting it to the chemistry at York account and, of course, cross-posting to Instagram. And we've tagged Theatre, Film and Television, they retweet it, things like that, okay? So that's quite nice. So, in conclusion, okay, I've tried to talk about what social media is. We're all quite accustomed to that. I've tried to talk about the existing social media use in the Department of Chemistry at York. Now, both at the department level and from Dave Smith, Andrew Parsons, and Paul Clark, okay? Now, what I'll say is, as a facilitator, it was a lot more easy for me as an academic to adopt and be open to new social media technologies, or technology in general, okay? Because of the examples set by colleagues in my department. So I was in a fortunate position because of that, okay? Academics, perhaps, in a department that really don't use social media much, or e-learning strategies in general, may be a little bit more reticent, all right? And that could be associated with some of the challenges that we've already spoke about. I talked about combined use of Twitter and YouTube, Snapchat, the Chemistry at York app, and very, very recent work on gamification and social media, okay? So hopefully that was insightful for you. Does anyone have any questions? I'd be delighted to hear your feedback about things that I've said, things that you might have done differently or advised me differently from an e-learning type of perspective. Yeah, at the back there. There's a microphone, I think.
Hi there, thank you for your presentation. I just wondered, are all the tweets and videos and things you share public, or are they to a specific group or your cohort and things like that? Because I don't know whether you've got a social media policy, I'm sure you have,
We do.
or run into any problems with the social media policy in terms of your engagement with students, whether that puts you off or causes any problems for you.
Excellent question, yeah. I mean, a lot of the work that I've personally done, where I encourage students to submit videos, okay, or paper-based exercises via Twitter or YouTube, it's not compulsory. It's just if they want to. And indeed, students want to engage with it, with the activity, but don't want to do it via social media. So I get a lot of emails too. And so that's another, and obviously, if it's a competition, the email attempts are also valid too. Now, in terms of what Dave does, though, for his YouTube videos that are summatively assessed, okay, I'm not so clear. But as I understand it, well, he certainly asks all students the permission first to put it onto YouTube, okay? What I think he does is the student submitted via Blackboard, he summatively assesses it, okay? Because the assessment is based on the communication of science, as opposed to, say, how the worldwide community engage with it and the comments, the number of views. That's not part of the actual assessment. And then subsequent to that, as a nice tag-on, he will then post it to actually YouTube, or the student creates a YouTube account and he posts it on his channel, something like that. I think it's the actual latter, with their permission. Okay, I think that's how Dave does it. But what I would say is, I mean, I don't care about my face going on Twitter and social media, so I don't really have to ask me. But anyone, PhD students, for example, when I'm doing the Snapchat work, I always ask them, and the PI, of course, because it's research. Okay, we have to get their permission first. Alternatively, perhaps when I'm at a conference, I may take a photo, and that might be the back of people's heads, for example, and as I understand, that's okay. Does that answer your question a little bit, or is there anything further?
Yeah, I think it does. It's just whether the fear of being chastised by, the fear of being chastised by a social media policy within the university puts you or anybody else off, really.
I think I'm lucky because of what the department have done so far, so I've just followed their example. Maybe I'm quite lucky. I mean, in terms of policing this, okay, senior managers at the university could, for example, see the posts that I do on Twitter because they're always there, and Instagram. Snapchat, they can't, unless they follow the account, okay? So I could be doing anything, for example, from their perspective, and that might be a worry. I mean, it hasn't restricted me, and the staff in the Department of Chemistry are supportive of it as a new teaching tool, okay? And they've trusted me to actually send appropriate content to the actual students. But they don't have a way to police the Snapchat one. So I imagine that could be a worry for other staff trying to implement it elsewhere. Perhaps I've been lucky there.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent questions. Yeah, just at the front here.
It's a slightly bizarre question, but do you enjoy doing this, or is it part of your day job?
That's a really good question, yeah. What's important to add is no manager told me, Glenn, we need to enhance our e-learning strategy in the department. We need to be utilising social media more effectively. Get going. That didn't happen. And I think if it had, I probably wouldn't do it or really enjoy it. So that came from me. I wanted to enhance the student learning experience, and I wanted to do it in a new way. That's quite cool for me. And so Snapchat was something that kind of organically came out of that. Do I enjoy doing it? I do. I'm not a massive social media user. For example, I mean, Facebook, I don't really post anything. I just have a look at what my friends are doing, have a look at everyone getting married, and I'm like, with kind of Twitter, I don't post anything personal, okay? It's all professional. It's all kind of what I'm doing, what I'm going to do, advertising events, engaging with the actual community. So I do enjoy doing it because I see it being as benefit to the students, yeah. It's something new, and it's easy to do. It's quick. If it took anything longer than what it does now, I really wouldn't do it. But I'm already thinking anyway about trying to contextualize course content, okay? So I'm thinking about these things, and all I have to do is take a photo and type something, and then I can send it off. So it's quite easy. And because it's easy and quick, that's why I do it. And I think there's a similar argument for Andy and his EEDC Twitter use, where he contextualized everyday chemistry through the Valentine's Day example. Now, he posts, say, 3 updates per day where he creates these bespoke photos. I wouldn't want to do that, actually. I couldn't be bothered. It probably doesn't take him too much time. He might just read the actual paper. You know, it's World Book Day, for example. We'll talk about paper chemistry or lignin, for example, and then have a cool photo. I wouldn't be bothered to actually do that. So it's quite interesting how we both love organic chemistry, but and it isn't because Andy's already done it or anything like that. I would see doing this EEDC post here as much more of a chore than what I do. So I think everyone's got different attitudes towards different.
So a follow-up question, because I'd say what you're doing is quite engaging, and I think is probably helping embed learning. Given the activity that you have on social media, how much activity do you have on your VLE site and all of your more traditional learning materials?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and probably the answer isn't what people are going to like. As an academic, we don't like the VLE particularly. We think it's not engaging at all. There's so many clicks in order to be able to do anything, I feel. In terms of students engaging with the VLE, discussion forums, I mean, it's very low. It really is. We've used other platforms such as Messenger and WhatsApp to actually facilitate discussion, and that works well. But utilising the VLE really hasn't been too productive for us. So what we use the VLE for is to effectively post learning objectives or lecture handouts. We utilise multiple choice quizzes a lot. That's great. Students love multiple choice quizzes. And we use it for 2 purposes. And this is very popular amongst staff and students, and we recently implemented it in 2 different ways. The first way is ahead of support sessions, tutorials, workshops, for example. We'll ask students to complete a multiple choice quiz with more fundamental type questions where they can get instant feedback, okay? And then we save the tutorial for the more in-depth, difficult stuff. And the students love that. And similarly, in conjunction with tutorial videos, we've created mini VLE packages comprised of online multiple choice questions and videos, and that supports their revision. So the students do use it a lot for that. We put lecture notes on there. There's a reading list. But that's it. It's quite limited in terms of how we use the VLE. The other thing, again, is a multiple choice question, and that's ahead of practical laboratory experiments. We get them to do safety calculations and quantity reagent calculations, things like that. But in general, I would say that as a member of staff, I'm not very good with the VLE. The e-learning team's absolutely fantastic in advising me. We don't particularly use it extensively. I don't feel as though it's that engaging. We haven't done any marking through the VLE. Unfortunately, we don't have grade mark. I think if we did, that would really help. And so I don't think we use the VLE to its full capacity. And that's why we're turning to things like this. Yeah. Certainly to engage students. Any other questions? Yeah.
Do you have any problems with trolls?
With what, sorry?
With trolling. People giving you abuse online.
Oh, no. I haven't had that at all, I don't think. I think if you have a Twitter account, you have to be prepared for that. So the staff in the Department of Chemistry, it tends to be the case when you discuss your personal life or controversial things, perhaps religion, things in the news, you get a lot more followers. And when you put a lot of opinions on Twitter, then I think you are more susceptible to things like trolls. I haven't experienced it yet.
Thank you very much, Glenn. Glenn will be around over coffee and this evening if you want to ask him more questions. Can I give you one of these?
Thanks very much.
Just to explain to people, these are locally produced York Cocoa House gift boxes. For those who can't see from the back, you may know York has a big chocolate heritage. Once upon a time there was Rowntree's, it's now all been swallowed, and Terry's of York's now all been swallowed up by European multinational companies.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you.